Hello, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me on another of my wonderful interviews. I don't know if you're a bit like me at the moment. You might be thinking, do you know what? Wouldn't it be nice to get away from the rat race, get a bit of land, go back to the basic things in life, growing your own food, perhaps having a few animals, and maybe at the end of it all, sell the extra to the local people and just getting away from all that nonsense that's going on. Well, it sounds idyllic, and if you can find a piece of land, and that's what my partner Julia and I are trying to do, it does come with a few problems because everything is legislated these days. There's all these rules and regulations of what you can and what you can't do. So how do you get round that? How do you navigate the legislators? Well, I'm very pleased to say that I've got a lovely lady who's coming to talk to us. She's been on before because she is a GAPS coach, and we were talking about the gut and how you can improve your health by feeding the gut good stuff. And she told me, on a sort of by the way, I used to have a small holding, and we got round the legislators, and I thought, blimey, we've got to talk to you. It's Emma Goodwin. Hello, Emma. Been on the show before. Lovely to have you back.
Hello, Richard. Well,
How
thank
are
you for
you?
having me. I'm very well, thank you. And I've been listening avidly to a lot of your interviews, and you've got so many threads that you're pulling together. It's really remarkable and well done. I'm really hats off to you.
Thank you very much. So I was fascinated when you said that you'd had all your small holding, you did various different things, and yet somehow you were able to navigate round the legislators. And my partner Julia and I, and Julia was on the last time when we were talking together. She can't be here today. Children are off school, so they need looking after. And we've been looking at it and we were thinking, oh, we'd have some pigs and we'd have chickens and we'd have this. And of course, all of this comes with complications, as I said at the outset. So how did you manage it? How did you get round all of this?
Well, I remember when we first moved onto the land, we received a letter from, I forget the name of the institution, but it was something to do with animal welfare or animal health or something like that. And it was like, you need to tell us what you're doing and how many animals you've got and da 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 da. Da. And at that time, I didn't have any animals. And also they got my name wrong, and there were a few other discrepancies in the letter. And I was a bit short with them, and I just basically rang them up and I went, don't know who you are, and I don't know why you're contacting me, but it's none of your business. And I haven't got any animals at the moment, so basically mind your own.
Yeah.
But of course, I was planning on getting animals, and I was like, right, what's going to go on here now? Are they going to be on my back? So basically, what we did was, well, we started off with the Great Easter Experiment, as we called it, which is then came to be known as the Coop Co-op. But we put flyers up around the village and said, give your kids an experience they'll remember for always, rather than Easter eggs. Let them
Right.
come and collect their own eggs. And you feed the chickens and change the water and collect the eggs and visit once a fortnight. So it was 14 families who shared the care of a flock of 30 laying hens. Worked really beautifully. And the beauty of that as well is that you can feed the hens your scraps because it's a private members club.
So could you not feed your hens scraps anyway? Are you not
You
supposed to
can
do that?
if you're not selling your eggs to the public.
Right.
But if you're selling your eggs to the public, you have to give them feed that comes in a bag, which is hugely expensive these days. So the purpose of pigs and chickens really are as omnivores, and they can hoover up the scraps. They can make good use of your scraps and your waste and stuff you
Yes.
don't need. But according to DEFRA, the Department for the Environment and Farming and Rural Affairs, we're not allowed to feed our pigs and chickens scraps if we're going to sell their produce to the public.
And presumably the reason they say that is that it's health and safety purposes, because
Yeah.
if the feed is different all the time, who knows what's in that? And some people will abuse it by feeding perhaps your animals, not your animals, their
Yeah.
animals, to completely the wrong things, and
Agreed.
maybe that would poison it. But it sort of
But
forces you to follow one line only,
yeah,
and then you have to rely on providers of the seed or the feed or whatever.
and mostly the seed in the feed is contaminated, in my opinion, with soy and GMO. So I
Right.
don't want to be feeding my
Yeah.
animals with a packaged good that has got soy and GMO in it. If you can't afford organic, and who can afford it? Hardly anything these days, frankly, the way things are going. So
Mm.
the pigs and the chickens should be there to recycle for us. So that
And it's what
means,
we did, and we did. I mean, that's the way it was always done.
yeah. And then
Mm.
suddenly the legislator came along and said, no, you can't do that anymore. You've got to do it like this. And it's like, well, who are
Mm.
you to tell us what to do, please? Now,
Yes.
I agree with you. There are going to be some unscrupulous people who are going to be feeding the chickens and the pigs some questionable things. But, if you're part of a community farm where all are welcome to come and have a look and see what's going on, you can judge for yourself when you come to the farm whether this farm is run in a manner that you appreciate, with respect for all life, for the web of life, with the chickens moved regularly to fresh ground, the pigs moved regularly to fresh ground. There's this cycle of life, it actually
Mm.
enhances the smallholding to have that regeneration. So, yeah, you become a private members club, basically. So, being,
So, oh right. So a private members club. So you're not open to the public, but public can join the club, and then it becomes its own thing.
it's so beautifully simple. You write what your rules are. We can feed our chickens scraps from your kitchen that have been kept scraped into a bucket in the freezer. Say, I don't know, you can have
Mm.
rules. Scrape all your scrapings from your plates onto the into a bucket in the freezer, and then bring it once a fortnight to feed the chickens or whatever.
Now, people did this during the Second World War. There were buckets at the end of the streets
Slops.
because the livestock needed to be fed, and we weren't able to bring in as much feed as we could. Because during the Second World War, I think it was 2/3 of the food that we consume was coming from overseas, and
Was it so much?
yeah, and the convoy ships that were bringing this in were being targeted by the Germans at that time, of course, and so there was this whole thing about not only dig for victory, but and if you look in the old pictures, you'll see these pig bins were set up at ends of streets, and you were there to take your scraps. So everybody did. No
Yeah.
legislator going, oh no, you can only use this feed. Sorry, mate. Because
No,
everybody needed to be fed. And the
exactly.
pigs, of course, provided a huge amount of meat.
Yeah. And you can supplement the animal's feed by, say, all of your peelings, all of your, the tops of the carrots and stuff like that. You can
Mm,
boil them all up into a mash and add a bit of grain that's been soaked and sprouted to suddenly augment the nutritional value of everything. And, to
yes.
cook up a mash for the animals is an excellent way of stretching the grain and stretching the feed. And then you can be sure, so we had pigs as well. And the pigs were in pig club, we called it, and people were effectively owning a quarter of a pig, or you'd own a part of the pig while it was still alive,
Mm,
unless you could afford a whole piglet or whatever. So people would pay up front and buy the piglet, and then we would collectively look after the piglets, taking them to underneath the oak trees so they could eat the acorns and whatnot, moving them to a patch of brambles that we wanted cleared on the land. We were using the pigs as rotivators and hedge trimmers, and we were using the pigs to actually help us manage the land. And we would sprout their grain. So I'd get beans and barley. Beans were pigeon feed, I think. That was the cheapest I managed to find. So it was actually food for birds. But
yes.
what you'd do is you'd get one of those big garden buckets, put holes in the bottom of it. Um, so it was like a big sieve. Then you'd fill up a another bucket full with the grain with the water, let it sit for 24 hours, and then pour it into the bucket that was a sieve. And you'd have sprouted or soaked grains which swell to twice the size. And when they're activated like that, it's a bit like the same with the gut health stuff. You don't eat we don't eat any grains anyway, but you don't eat any pulses or beans or any kind of nuts or seeds without them being activated, which basically means you sprout them, because by sprouting them, you're bringing them to life and getting rid of the phytates, anti nutrients, and other plant toxins contained in them. So then they swell to twice the size, they start sprouting a little bit, the nutritional value has gone through the roof compared to a dry grain. And you've doubled your money, if you know what I mean. You've got a sack
Yeah.
of grain, you've doubled it, you've increased the nutritional value. Yes, it's a bit of work, but then the animals are benefiting no end because you've taken the toxins out and you've made it easier for them to digest. It's a little bit fermented. You know, if you've sprouted them for a few days, they're a little bit fermented. Again, more nutritional value. Pigs and chickens love fermented foods. So if you've got a bucket of slops and it's started to bubble a little bit, they're going to love that.
It's interesting because if you're you've got your pigs, you've got your chickens, whatever you've got, you don't want to be feeding them crap anyway, because ultimately you're doing it because you like the animals and giving them a better life, but also you're going to end up eating them,
Yeah.
or you're going to eat the product of them, well, if that's eggs and things. So it's in your interest to give them the best food possible. So in your private members club, would people come in themselves bringing their own scraps, or did they rely on just you to provide the
We did.
scraps?
So, say if somebody had a function or a do, or there was a wedding or something, you know, and there'd be loads of food left over, it would
Mm.
all get just like whacked in a bucket and taken over to the pigs. Um,
Yeah. And it's amazing because we hear how much food is wasted.
mm,
And even though, I mean, even me at home, you're chopping up stuff and bits. You know, I get a veg box at the moment till I can actually grow my own and have space to do it. And it's amazing, either I haven't got around to eating something and it's starting to go off, or I've used as much as of the vegetable, whatever it is, and there's still bits, like you say, the carrot tops, which you're either throwing in the bin or you're throwing onto a compost heap, or if you've got animals, you're throwing it to the animals.
and it makes you feel better feeding the
Mm,
animals with your scraps. And if you've got a cat or a dog, they love all the meaty stuff, don't they, as well?
yes.
We should never be throwing any foodstuffs in the bin, ever. And interestingly, thinking about, you know, the diet of your animals and how that's going to affect them. When I was given a sow and a boar when we moved onto the land by a local farmer, it was like, yeah, go on, they're old, you know, you can have them. And I was like, well, thank you. I'm grateful because we were just trying to make ends meet. And anyway,
Right.
they were Cooney Cooney, which is people don't particularly like that breed because it's quite fatty. But as a GAPS coach, I'm like, yippee, because we want the fat. We want the good fats. It's the fats that heal us quicker than anything, the fats and the ferments. So these pigs were originally hoovering up leftover bread from the bakery. So when we first got them, they were eating a whole heap of bread. And the farmer said, she's tired. She's had lots of litters now, and she probably won't breed that well. So she came to me pregnant, actually. So we had three little pigs within the first few weeks. And we were thrilled and we loved them and fed them beautifully. We were picking up the scraps from the local organic grocers. So they were having grapes and strawberries and old
Right.
lettuces along with the sprouted grain and any other scraps we could give them. They were rootling around in the earth. They were beautifully brought up little piglets. Anyway, she had two more litters after that. The next litter, she had five. Um, I wasn't feeding her any bread anymore. The next litter, she had five piglets. And the litter after that, she had nine piglets. That was over the
Wow.
space of about 2 years. And that was because I stopped giving her the grains. I stopped giving her the bread and
Mm.
started sprouting the beans and the barley and giving her a wide variety of scraps from the grocer. And she also used to get the back end of my chicken stock pot. She'd get the back end of my stock pots. So that would be bones and skin and gristly bits that were still, you know. So she had a really wide, varied diet. And where the farmer originally thought she was old and worn out and finished, she just wasn't fed properly. I mean, she was fed. She was fed. She got on
Mm.
okay. He did okay by it, and he was happy. But I thought she wouldn't last very long. But then she gave these two more litters, and look, we went from three piglets to five piglets to nine piglets. That's all to
Blimey.
do with nutrition.
Yes. Well, it just goes to show, and if it works for animals, it's going to work for us if we look after our own health and our own diets and what we eat.
Exactly.
Um, so, is there no rules then that private members club have to abide by? You just make up your own rules and away you go.
Exactly. That's exactly it. You decide. You know, you come together as a group and you say, what are our values? What sort of what are our outcomes that we're hoping for? We're hoping for optimal nutrition. We're hoping for
Mm.
the absolute optimal health and well-being of the animals on the land, because then, as part of that ecosystem, you know, you're going to be strengthening the web of life. And that's good for the water, that's good for the soil, that's good for the air, it's good for humans, it's good for wildlife, it's good for the animals. So you just make up whatever rules you like and you agree to abide by them. And then you're not under the jurisdiction of the public legislators.
That
Now
is amazing.
this comes, really into it really comes into focus when you want to slaughter your animals. Because for me, the idea of putting the animals in a trailer that they've never been in before
Mm.
and driving them somewhere they've never been before and them getting out and smelling blood and, you just sort of abandoning them when you've loved them and lived with them and,
Yes.
it's horrible. But what we did was we had a local marksman who had a gun license to cull the deer on the forest. And we asked him, would he like an in? And he said, yeah, I'm in for a cut of the meat. And we all met at 6 in the morning on the land. We already had the four little piggies in the barn. We let them out one by one into a little side bit of the barn, put their head in the bucket to eat. They were happy, just come straight out, head in the bucket, rootling around, happy as Larry. And with a silencer on the gun, pop, and they fall on the floor. Finished. Do you know what I mean? Then you
Mm.
have to slit the throat and let the blood, and we catch that in a bucket to make black pudding. And then you string
So
them
these
up.
were so these were piglets you were slaughtering.
Well, they were a year old, not quite a year old. They were about 9 months old. Yeah, they're quite big by then. They're
Mm.
quite big. They're not piglets. They're I called them the piglets because they were from the sow and the boar, but they're
Right.
only
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
nine.
No, because I was just when you described that, I was thinking of these lovely, cute little piglets
No,
coming
no, no,
out,
no.
and
They're big.
you're just shooting them willy nilly, which
They
sounded a
be
bit
no,
cruel.
no. They be four pigs like that, right? If they're hungry, they knock you off your feet if you're not
Mm.
careful.
Mm.
They're big, powerful. They've got character. They've got moods. You have to be respectful and careful with them. They'll knock you down, and if you're
So,
not careful.
as somebody who's not kept pigs, it's quite interesting to get a little bit of info about this. Why would you be slaughtering them after, say, if they're only a year? Would you not keep them a little bit longer, or is that does that affect the meat?
They'll if they're born, well, it's a question of feeding them. They've reached a certain size. They're not going to get
Mm.
much bigger than that.
Right.
You've already fed them to that size. They're adult. They're grown.
Yes.
You're not going to carry on feeding them what I mean, they might get a bit bigger, but you're going to have the next litter coming up. Smaller the animal, you can keep them on a certain patch of land. They're not going to trash the land because they're extraordinarily destructive pigs. They get their snouts under the pasture, and that's it. Your pasture being absolutely finished. You need to move them around, and there's a lot of work involved. So
Mm.
as soon as they're ready, you want to see them into pies and sausages.
So for
That's
those
why you're
people,
doing it. Do you
yeah,
know what I
well,
mean?
that's true. But I suppose if you haven't done it before, it's quite daunting for somebody to think in that way. Once you've got the pig, I mean, it's easy going to the supermarket and you buy your bacon, or a farm shop, which would obviously better, and you don't have, even then. Even in a farm shop, you're not really aware of where the pigs necessarily have come from unless they're the farmer's own pigs. And even then, you don't really say how old were these pigs, what kind of life have they had, how much respect were they given. Perhaps people might be shocked to think that even then it's still a bit of a factory process, that you feeding them to a certain size, and then that's it,
They're
bang.
not pets, Richard. They're there to
No, but they
feed
are living.
you.
I mean, they're living creatures,
And
aren't
they're
they? And
loved. I tell you, they have their tummies tickled. You
mm,
go, especially when you're in a club, pig club.
mm.
They get new visitors every day. Not new, but I mean, if say there's 6 or 7 people in the club, they'll get new enthusiastic people every day going, "Hey, hi, piggy. Let me scratch your back for you and give you a tickle. And here's a special treat. Look, I've got an apple for you and whatnot." You know, they
What was it like when you had to do your first pig? slaughter your
It's
first pig?
shocking, shocking, Richard. Absolutely shocking. I'm not going to lie. I was very emotional, but it certainly brings it all home when you do this kind of thing. And you don't waste a morsel. You don't waste even a tiniest speck of the fat or whatever, the crackling that you don't waste even the tiniest morsel of it when it's your own animals. You're reverential about it, you're deeply reverential. I was distraught when I eventually I had to actually finish off my sow, Rita, because we had moved onto the land in a crowd-funded love shack that we barn raised together as a community in 2014. This was, and we ran that small holding for the local people, local food for local people, all welcome to come and learn about how to do no dig. I saw you had Charles Dowding on, excellent.
Mm.
For a decade, for a whole, I mean, for we were there. We've got the land in 2011, and we started, and then moved on to the land in 2014. Um, and we had a massive. I mean, I wish I'd known well, I wish I had known then what I know now from people like allegedly Dave. Have you had Dave on your show? Yeah,
We've
yeah,
had
yeah, yeah,
allegedly,
yeah,
Dave. Yeah.
yeah. Because I wouldn't have gone begging to the local authority to let me stay and do my business on my land,
Mm.
and ask for retrospective planning permission. I would have just done it a completely different way, a completely different way. But in the end, the so-called authorities basically said they were going to take out an injunction on us, and it's a long story. But we had to leave the land, which meant I couldn't be there to take care of the animals anymore. So I had to finish off my sow. And on that day, I was really, really sad. And she was so trusting and lovely, and I'm getting a bit emotional thinking about it. you know,
Uh,
but we did
yeah.
the
Well,
same. We did the same. There was no way I could keep her.
no. So when you took your land, then I mean, again, we're talking about dodging the legislators. They got you in the end, then, did they?
Well, I mean, we followed the usual pathways of planning permission
Hmm.
for that part of the equation, which was, in hindsight, a mistake, but I don't regret any of it. It is what it is. But what we were
But
talking,
I mean, if you applied for planning permission, why did it come to an end? What did they disagree with?
well, I mean, good question, because I looked at all their planning policy documents, went through it with a fine tooth comb, and I thought I
Hmm.
was actually providing them with, I don't know, 18 out of 20 of their requirements, local food for local people, rural enterprise, 0 miles to market, carbon neutral living, because we had a biochar rocket stove that actually gave us our hot water, our heating, and a bucket of biochar to start building soil with. I think I built about like 7 inches of deep, dark soil on that veg patch. I did 20 veg boxes a week. I was providing local food for local people.
Hmm.
But I think they were fearful of. We were completely off grid as well, completely off grid. And at the time, I was banging on about being carbon neutral because I believed in that story at that time, as did they and all their legislature. But we took them to high court after the second appeal failed, and then they threatened an injunction, and they're basically bankrupting us because you can't earn very much money as a farmer anyway, as a smallholder, and so they just basically bankrupted us, and we had to leave the land, and take down the dwelling that we put up.
So this is obviously for people like myself and others who are thinking of doing this. What would you say the mistakes were then? Because if you'd followed all the guidance and they'd agreed that it was all fine for you to do what you did
They
and you
didn't
set up.
agree. We asked for retrospective planning permission.
Ah,
And
right.
lots
Oh,
of
okay.
lots of people ask for retrospective planning permission. It's not an unusual thing at all.
No.
And there are
Right.
lots of people in lots of other counties that have been successful with their small holdings,
Yes.
their retrospective planning permission.
But is that a
But
gamble then? Is
it
that
is a
because
bit of
if
a
you
gamble, and Wealden are specifically, well, in my opinion, corrupt. That's a great, massive claim to make, but they hid some they hid some documentation from their portal so that the public couldn't see it. that was in our favour. They did lots of dodgy deals. They gave us 4 enforcement notices instead of one. They were really nasty about it. Really, really, really nasty about it.
So do you think if you had not done it retrospectively, if you'd done it in advance and you said, look, there's this piece of land,
Maybe, yeah, maybe, but that would have
do
probably
you?
taken 10 years or 12 years or 15 years. And at the time, I was in my 40s, in my early 40s, and I had a lot of energy. And I was like, come on, I
Right.
want to do it now. And
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
need to
No,
do it now,
right. So are you saying it does take? It's not like just filling in a form and then next week they say, "Oh, that sounds fine, go ahead." Or no,
If
I mean, I don't know.
only.
You see, this is why I'm completely ignorant.
So
That's why
it
I'm
takes
asking.
months and months and years sometimes, and it costs, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands to do
So
it that
that's
way.
why, right? So people buy the land, they get on it, they do it retrospectively because it otherwise, and it's a gamble.
Well, we
So
thought it'd be no skin off their nose because we were off grid. We didn't
yeah,
have any
what
electricity. We
services it?
didn't have any gas. We were off grid. We were just on our land doing a small holding, feeding local people. We thought it would all be good, but they obviously wanted to make an example of us and do a kind of ritual humiliation. And we
And did they
ended
give
up.
any reason why they were
Oh,
objecting to it?
yeah, loads. We're in an area of outstanding natural beauty, and you're going to be causing harm to the Ashdown Forest, AONB, and lots of really duff reasons that we came with counter arguments.
Right.
And we employed a guy to come and do a wildlife survey on the land, and he concluded that actually we would have added so much benefit by being there because we created ponds and edge, and we created swales that were capturing the rainwater, stop it running off down the Medway. There was lots of wonderful plans that we had um, what's the word?
Implemented.
Yeah, implemented. Thank you. Um,
So if let's say you were going to do this again, because it was just a way of life that you loved, and you thought, well, there's got to be a way. What would you do differently? Do you think, if at all?
I would put the land in trust, and then I would create a private members association, and then I would work with a group of people to create the environment that we wanted to be in, and I would work outside of that matrix of the public jurisdiction because the public servants are there to serve the public. But if you're operating in the private, which is what the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation do, the private foundation, so-called philanthropic, they're private. So we need to start operating in a private capacity as people on this earth, to avoid the public legislation, which, in my opinion, is causing harm. It's not actually helping humanity, as we can see.
And is that what when you say you put the land into a trust? Is that what that makes it into a private thing?
Yes. And then there's the trustees and beneficiaries and the creator of it, who creates it, owns it. Um, yeah. I mean, there's some organisations out there, like there's you should get Trina on from MFS-PMA, the Private Members Association people. They will help people to create trusts, help people to create private members associations, help people with the paperwork so that you can show that you are officially constituted as a private members club. And here's your constitution, and here's your membership rules, and here's your list of members, and here's their signatures, and they've agreed to abide by these rules. And all of the money coming in is for the benefit of the members. So, of course, if I need to be paid, though, to administer this, that's for the benefit of the members. And so that, it's a really, we need to all start looking into private members. Everyone who's actually operating as a sole trader or even as a small business can start to say, I'm trading in the private. And everyone who's trading with me is a private member, a private client. So then suddenly you don't come under the jurisdiction of public legislation like tax paying, for instance.
So, so if you've got your trust set up and you've got your private members, and so let's say there's, for the sake of argument, 20 people involved, but you realise actually we could be, there's more food here on our small holding. We could do with another 20. Do they just join up, or have they got to sign up all the
You've
documents?
got to get the signatures. You've got to get a wet signature from whoever it is who's going to be a member, and they have to have had a look at the membership agreement.
But once you've set it up, you can continually add people to it.
Yeah, as many
Yeah.
members as you like. Why
Yeah,
not?
I'm just thinking I don't know why not.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking if you set it up and it's only those people, because people will die and new people will come in, or people get bored, or
Yes,
move
people
away.
can leave. But you have that all written in your constitution. Yeah.
So that it's just that bit. So there are ways around all of this then.
Yeah, I first heard about this from the Higher Side Chats, an interview with this guy. I can't remember his name now, but he had a wine vineyard in California, and he had a shop on site, and he wanted to sell his wine. And this was during lockdown, and everyone was not allowed to have their premises open to the public or whatever because of lockdown. Everyone had to wear masks and blah 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 blah. And he just said, no, 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 no. This is my shop on my land, and I'm opening it, and I'm going to be a private members association. Anyone who wants to buy anything from my shop will just have a quick look at the membership agreement and sign on the dotted line, and pay a penny membership or a cent, a dollar membership, or whatever. And then so he was open, and on the second day of opening, the so-called authorities showed up and went, right, we've got a warrant here, you've got to shut down, you've got to stop what you're doing right now, this is against the law, you're going to get in trouble, we're going to fine you, etc., etc. And he basically said, thank you so much. I'd be very happy to comply with anything you say if you just prove my obligation. And when you come back with the proof, then we can talk. So thank you for now, and you may leave the property. Goodbye. We're private here. It is a private members association. We're not under your jurisdiction. Thank you. Goodbye.
And that was it. And they never came back.
I think they did come back, and they did, try to cause trouble. And you have to be prepared to stand on your rights. It might be taken to court. It might go to court. You might have to stand there and say, yes, Your Honour, no, Your Honour, 3 bags full, Your Honour. I think you'll find that I am in the private realm, and so these people have no jurisdiction over me, Your Honour. Or, there are people out there, like allegedly Dave, like lovely Nick from the peacekeepers.org. Had him on as well, I think.
Did I? Can't
Yeah,
remember now.
Nick Hunt. Nick Hunt.
Oh, I haven't. Yeah, it doesn't.
Org.
Oh, right.
It's people like him. If there's a good enough case, that's going to give some precedent, that's going to help lots of other people. There'll be people out there who'll come and help you be a Mackenzie's friend in court and stand up. But until we all start standing on our rights,
yes.
and
So I mean, although you say, I'm just trying to get to the nub of it for somebody who's sitting there watching, who's very excited about setting up a small holding and doing it, having animals, but doesn't necessarily want the risk of the gamble, as it were, for retrograde stuff, and so they might be listening, saying, "Oh, okay, I just set up a trust. You set up a private members club, and we'll be okay because it's outside the jurisdiction." But they don't want to then think, "Hang on a minute, what's that business? You might end up in court. I thought this was I thought this was the mechanism."
We've confused matters a little bit here, because I was talking about retrospective planning permission, which has got nothing to do with having a small holding.
Right.
Right. That's got nothing. If you've got a house to live in with a little bit of land, you can have a small holding. They are going to try and come and tell you what you can and can't do, and you've got to get your animals tagged on their ears, and you've got to register this with a county parish small holding number, and blah 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 blah. But if you want to, you should be able to operate in a private members club, and not be under any kind of control of inspectors coming in and seeing what you're doing. You can just say, membership inspect us every day.
Yes, I'm just trying
we didn't talk about slaughter either, which we should do quickly. Right. According to DEFRA, you're not allowed to slaughter your animals on site if you intend to sell the meat to the public. But what about if it's your pig and you co-own the pig with 6 other people? Right? then you come together and you say, what do you want to do with the pig? Should we just like, kill it here and gut it and make our own sausages? Yeah, let's do that. We can do that. We can set up and do that. Then, because you've co-owned the pig, you're not selling the meat to the public. You're sharing a killed piglet. Do you know what I mean? Piglet,
Mm.
pig, whatever. Um, that's a good way of being in a small organisation of
But is that
local
acceptable to the
neighbours.
authorities?
We don't care if it's acceptable to them because they don't care about us. Literally.
No, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's all very well to have that attitude, and I'm not knocking that attitude because I'm sort of very much trying to sort of go on to the private myself. But from the point of view of my audience, who might
Yeah.
be sitting there saying, "Well, it's all very well sitting there and saying, oh, we don't care about them," but at the end of the day, if they come along, bankrupt me, take my animals, and cause
No,
me,
they can't bankrupt you with as on a small holding. It's none of their business. We've confused the issue a little bit by talking about the retrospective planning permission, which had nothing to do. Like the land we had was just a bare patch of land, and we needed a roof over our heads, so we knocked up a little love shack, right? Then we asked for retrospective planning permission. That's the end of that story. We didn't get it. I'd do it differently next time. But actually, when it comes to having animals on your land and wanting to be able to feed them whatever you want to feed them and to be able to slaughter them where and when you want to slaughter them, not to be going and using an abattoir, right? That's possible. You can do it if you're only going to eat the meat yourself.
right.
Yeah? They can't touch you for that. They can't touch you with a barge pole.
So
Right?
you could, so in other words, you could buy a piece of land with a house on it.
Yes.
You could have a pig.
Yes.
You can feed the pig whatever you damn well like.
Yes.
You can shoot the pig
Yes.
on your land,
Yes.
and then you can eat it,
Yes. That's
and
right.
you can share it around
You
the
can give it
produce.
away.
You can give it away, or you could share it in a private members club.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
It's
So
probably best though for the private members to co-own the animals,
right,
not
okay.
not to just come in at the end and say yes, I'll have that piece of meat, please. No, they need to co-own. They need to take care of the animals. They need to be involved in the slaughter process. They need to. It's your pig. It's your pig. You need to come and do
Could
it.
you sell a piece of paper with a number on it for whatever price, and with that you get a free lump of pig?
That's a good idea, Richard. Yeah, exactly.
You know, if you buy this bit of paper,
Yeah.
which just has a random number on it, well, not a random number, and you get a free bit of pig. Now, which bit of pig would you like? Oh, a nice chop. There we go. Yeah, that's free because we've got two more. We've got a glut of this pig. But
Yeah.
thanks for coming and buying that little piece of paper for £10, whatever whatever it is. It might be an expensive chop, but it'd probably be a good one. So okay, yeah. So we got confused there with the small with the bit of land and the rest. So yes, so I'm glad we've cleared that up. So, but just finishing off then, if somebody's sitting there like myself thinking, the options, of course, it comes down to what you can afford, and if you can only afford, say, an acre of land or 2 acres, whatever it is, and you want a bit of land, and there's no house on it, and there's no planning permission, it seems that the two options are either you just go ahead and do it and then take the gamble and ask for the planning permission in retrospective, or you spend months or years, whatever it is, trying to get permission and prove what you want to do, by which point you may have run out of money and the
Yeah,
land
exactly.
may have been washed away by floods long ago. But if you buy a piece of land that has a dwelling on it,
Yeah.
that's basically a home or a homestead or whatever, and then you're okay.
Yeah.
And you can do what you like. Then you can set up your private.
And actually, you'd be surprised how little land you need. You could have, a couple of goats in just a little garden shed with some hard standing, and then you put down bedding. So you put down wood chip, you put down shavings or whatever, and you'd call it deep litter bedding. And you just let it get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper over a month or two until then you clean it out into a compost heap or whatever. You can have animals in quite a small area if you do deep litter bedding, and you could milk your goats, whatever, in the goat club. People don't need that much land to start with small animals.
No, I guess it's the availability of the land. If you, I mean, my worry is that you would buy land or a house with some land on, and then you get into it, and it's not enough. that actually you go, well, actually, we want goats over there, we want pigs over there, a couple of horses, a few cows. And before you know it, you've got a 500-acre farm, but you've only got an acre land. You
It
know,
depends.
you're
It depends how you manage it, you know. There's a fantastic little short film everyone should go and watch called 100,000 Beating Hearts, which is the story of Will Harris in White Oaks pastures in Bluffton, Georgia. And he started off with a certain acreage with only 700 head of cattle. And he was doing it the industrial farming way with hormones and artificial fertilizers and the works, lots of high vet bills and poisons on the land, and the inadvertent consequence of that was that the soil was dead. And then he realized, as a fourth generation commodity cowboy, as he called himself, that actually doing it the natural way would be better. So he cut all the hormones, all the antibiotics, all the routine rubbish that they were using on the land, and he increased the number of animals on the same patch of land to 700 head of cattle, 1,000 ewes, 1,000 goats, 500 breeding sows, geese, turkeys, laying hens, poultry for meat, you name it. He reckoned he had 100,000 beating hearts on that same bit of land. And the pinnacle of the food pyramid was that he had a flock of bald eagles,
gosh,
nicking a few chickens here and there, but who cares? The birds and the bees were flourishing.
chickens might care.
But you see, it's how you manage the land, and regenerative agriculture is the way forward. Yeah.
Well, there you go. We have talked about how to navigate the legislators and all of that. And I hope it's been of some interest. It'd be interesting to read the comments, of course, as ever, what other people have done or what other recommendations people have got, if they have any. And hopefully we've allayed certain fears or enthused people to give certain things a try. It's been a fascinating conversation, as ever, with these interviews. Thank you so much, Emma.
You're very welcome. We should put the links to the Private Members Association people who help people create
Do you have
trusts.
them? Can you send them
I
to me?
do. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, and I'll put the link so that people can find out more. And if you've got any advice or help, then do let me know. And if you're doing it, come on the show. And if it's not too far away from where I am, I'll come and visit, and we can have a little look at what you're doing. I think in this particular state of where the world is at the moment, a lot of people not wanting to buy highly processed foods, very interested in getting back to the land and growing stuff or dealing with animals. And maybe people need to group together and join forces.
That's the way.
So because not everybody has their £1 million of free money to spend whatever they want to do.
That's the way.
So there we go.
Get
Emma,
together.
thank you so much for talking to me.
You're very welcome, Richard. And can I just mention that people can find me at Timeless Cookery?
Yes, I'll put a link. Timeless Cookery. I'll put a link into the description, of course. And so just give us a quick sales pitch of what you do with Timeless Cookery for those that haven't seen the other video.
I help people to heal and seal leaky gut. So any kind of chronic illness, any kind of disease that they're feeling dodgy, heal the gut, and that will help the body to heal itself. So I'm a cookery school teacher, and I teach people how to cook using the food of the medicine at Timeless Cookery.
Timeless Cookery. There we go. I'll put the link in the description. Do check out Emma Goodwin. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that, ladies and gentlemen. All good fun. And I'll be back with more of my monologues and what have you. But in the meantime, have fun. Look after yourselves from Emma and I. Goodbye.
Bye.